from doing that somewhat. I mean, Durham ended up investigating unnecessarily a bunch of people. But this is now the centerpiece of his reelection effort. And it appears, based on today's Times reporting, it's been turbocharged by his conviction.
Yeah, I think this falls into the category of things that he sort of has figured out. He figured out in the last weeks of the presidency that he could do a lot more without the guardrails around, and something that he would plow directly into if he came back. He really wanted this to be done when he was president. He really, at one point, there's this anecdote in the Mueller report that doesn't get a lot of attention, where he essentially held Sessions' job over his head and said, look, you know, I'm going to get rid of you unless you prosecute Hillary Clinton. He wanted to order the Justice Department himself to do this, but there were these guardrails. Don McGahn writes a very lengthy memo to him saying, this is why you cannot do this. This is why this is a terrible idea. And they're able to contain Trump. And obviously, among many other things, if he were to come back, you know, in the same way that he talks about his use of pardons to free the January 6 rioters, these are things that he would use the government's power proactively to go after his enemies. And I just need to say that's different than obstruction. Obstruction is a serious thing and it's illegal. But to use all of the powers of the federal government against an enemy would be a new chapter.
It's difficult because I think you look at how the presidency ended. It ends with a deadly insurrection where hanging Mike Pence was the insurrectionist self-proclaimed mission statement. And I think there's how much worse could it be than that? But what you're saying is, and I think people sort of sigh when they hear this idea of guardrails, but this was a specific thing he wanted to do from day one. And there were people around that had enough muscle memory of how the institutions of DOJ and the institutions of the White House counsel's office were supposed to function, that even if it was imperfect, they were enough of a rein on him. And you're saying that's over. The gig is up. He's going to come out.
And he also wasn't sophisticated enough to figure out how to plow through that. He could plow up to a certain point, but to get beyond that, to get beyond Don McGahn or John Kelly, he couldn't do that. He couldn't figure out how to do that. And I think he's gotten better at figuring that out. I think we saw that in the final weeks of the presidency. And so I think that is like a new muscle that he has developed that he figures he can move through. And I think you have to take him at his word.
You know, Andrew Weiss, when you were on the Mueller investigation, I think people have to think about this as radically as it's being reported, right? I mean, there wouldn't be a Mueller investigation. There wouldn't be a Jeff Sessions if no one would last 5 minutes if they displeased him. He would not. I mean, you know, Jim Comey's fired for not seeing to it to let Mike Flynn go. Mike Flynn would never be charged. I mean, it is such a departure from Trump 1.0. And I think there are lots of areas that would be a million times worse. We focus a lot here on our alliances and pulling out of NATO. But I think this is one that demands our focus in this moment.
So I think Mike has it completely right that there were people, particularly at the start of the Trump sort of 1.0 administration, that just won't be there. Jeff Sessions, whether you agree or disagree with his political views and what he wanted to do with the department, he understood it needed to be independent. And as we reported in the Mueller report, he himself gave the information about what it was that then President Trump wanted him to do with respect to Hillary Clinton. And at that point, they got rid of him, and Bill Barr was his lackey. And that is what will be the scope of a Trump 2.0. But you don't really have to worry about sort of like what would happen, because you're seeing it right now. In other words, all of the people who know much, much better and are going along with this. I keep on sort of using Senator Collins as an example because she knows damn well that this is